great to see you in large numbers post-launch. I must tell you something, my observation. I always like to moderate a session post-lunch because I feel, people have fulfilled their souls because they keep running for the first session in the morning, travel a lot, and many of them must not have had even their breakfast, though we had a breakfast in the morning here. So people just come running to be on a time in the first half. But second half is like relaxed. So take your seat back and just enjoy the conversation. Thank you so much. The idea behind this particular session, we were crafting the agenda for NextGen was, when we speak about India is going to become, the third largest economy in the world in a couple of years, it is going to become the $10 trillion economy, or maybe the economy of India will be doubled in next 5 to 6 years. And we have a plan for 2047, become a Vikasit Bharat or a developed economy. The question is, do we have an ecosystem? Do we have the facilities and do we have infrastructure ready? So that's why we thought, okay, let's, or maybe the questions are generally asked is, where is India's Silicon Valley? So that's why we decided to craft a session on this particular topic. So before, I begin with my panelists and ask them how they are building or how they're looking at India's Silicon Valley, I have a question for all of you. What do you think, where is India's Silicon Valley? Is there India's Silicon Valley right now? Where is it? Yes. Acha, Bombay mein kahan? BKC या Malad? Okay. और किसी का कोई व्यू है? कहाँ दिखती है Silicon Valley बॉम्बे में? Somebody told me Dharavi में आ रही है. Some large corporate is already building it. Anyone else has any view? Okay, sure. Let me, move my focus to the speakers. So, quick question to all of you. What would you like to see in India's Silicon Valley? Just to begin with, first question. Purnima, I would like to come to you first.
When I think of India's Silicon Valley, my first thing is that it has to be a fantastic tech hub where we have the state-of-art technology, where we have, all the right people, because talent, I think, is something that's most important. So we have the right people, we have the access to funds in order to have this fantastic technology. So I think, these are the three things that come to my mind.
Sure. Kero?
Thanks, Amol. I think from my perspective, for us to be the Silicon Valley, I think we must, going forward, as we all know, we have the industrial metaverse, so we should be really good in this in terms of understanding the physical and the digital twin, so to speak, how this is going to actually translate going forward. Have the right technology and tools in place to be leaders over there. Funding, I agree with Purnima, is extremely, extremely important. And a topic which is very close to my heart, which is all of us must learn how to unlearn, learn, and relearn. Because, we've probably not done this. All that we've studied probably in the past is good, not bad, not that it's not good. But going forward, that won't just help us. So we need to sort of relearn and probably unlearn some of the stuff, if you really want to be a tech leader.
Piyush?
Hi all, good afternoon. So to me, Silicon Valley is synonymous with the innovation through technology. And I think there are 4 stakeholders to it. One is consumer. So we have to solve real consumer problem for it to be accepted at a scale. Second is the employees. Like Purnima, you mentioned. I think, we have to create that environment where employees look forward to working in a startup ecosystem. Third is the regulator, which is sort of, promoting this as a one of the most focused initiative going forward. And fourth, like Kairav, you mentioned, is about the funding. Be it private or public, everyone should look forward that we are solving real business problem which makes return on investment and hence the investment.
Sure. Pratik?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So, we do hear sometimes that we have a Silicon Valley in India, in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in different places, maybe in Bombay, right? So probably the way it got started, the IT wave in India was more outsourcing of a lot of services, being the advantage of an English-speaking and a highly talented pool available and a lower cost. But if we really look into it, Silicon Valley is what my co-panelists summarized. It is the innovation and risk-taking ability. It is an environment which enables the risk-taking and the innovation, which also means on the regulatory side, the environment is flexible enough, as well as the capital availability side, you have that kind of capital appetite and risk appetite to, have that mindset of investing a lot of money, and may not all the ventures may work out, right? So those Indian pool of capital being available, along with obviously the talent.
Sure, I think very realistic and meaningful thoughts, but I would have enjoyed also listening, saying that traffic thoda kam chahiye. That would be the easiest way in the Silicon Valley. The place where Google will direct you with the direct locations and not guma firao idhar and udhar. Piyush, you spoke about startup funding and everything, so let me start with you. What is your vision of India Silicon Valley, which you maybe partly mentioned, but how possible do you think it is to replicate or even surpass the success of Silicon Valley here? How do you think it should transform India?
So I think Silicon Valley, right, this term actually came up through San Francisco somewhere in 1970s. And over the last 5 to 6 decades, we have seen companies like Google, Meta, Visa and all come up through that, right? So I think really you can see that over the 7 to 8 decades, what actually sort of did. And in a way, the best thing that has happened is that it encourages entrepreneurs to come in and take risk and solve real life problem through adoption of technology. I think that is something that's the biggest thing that we as Indians have embraced over the last few years. Like Pratik, you mentioned, it all started first with IT solutions in 1980s or 90s, and that's where it all started, that Bangalore is the India Silicon Valley. I think it all started from there. I think my vision is that end of the day, businesses have to solve real life problem, and that has to happen across the India. To be able to give access to the end customer, which is there across the India, and also able to generate employment, because the talent pool that is available is not only in Mumbai or Bangalore or Chennai, it's also there in Jaipur, it's also there in Patna. How can we give access to that? So in a way, it's all about forming those innovation hubs across the India. And which is where I think, again, those key stakeholders around government giving those benefits for us to set up that in the distinct far-fled areas, companies taking that risk, employees coming up from 2-tier cities and all. So that's my vision, that, if we can have this expand not only to metros, but to across India.
Yeah, sure, I think. So multiple Silicon Valleys that you want in India, which is a fair answer, Piyush. But the economy and specifically the startup world has already been flourished. If you look at even the startup data, we have 120 unicorn startups, right? Out of which, in fact, 26 are the fintech unicorn startups, and everybody is raising funds left, right, and center, even during the funding winter. So what else, and Purnima, the question to you is now, what is it that the government regulator should do specifically on the policy side so that, they will shape up and strengthen the Silicon Valley, maybe project which is there in the files today?
Yeah, so I think not just the government, the regulators, and the companies itself. Everyone, has a role to play. In fact, just before this, panel, I was speaking to him, and since he comes from the startup world, one of the first things he said is, you're coming from a life insurance company. So why are life insurance companies' funds not accessible to startups? Yeah, so even before government, the question that I want to really ask ourselves, and where we need regulatory simplification, is to enable us, like an insurance company which is flush with funds, to be able to invest in slightly riskier, asset classes like a startup. So therefore, they will benefit for sure, and we will benefit as well, because then we are able to give better returns to our policyholders. So I think that is, one thing I wanted to bring out. The other is, the help that you require from the government. Now, why is it that most of the investments that come into these startups are coming from abroad? It's coming from a SoftBank, it's coming from all these places. Because I think we have not we've not given enough incentives to the domestic investors. And so domestic investment is not as, keen to enter, the domestic investor is not so keen to enter into these startups as a foreign investor is. So how do you, make the regulations, or how do you make the incentives? Maybe you can give a tax incentive. Okay, it's much better now. I think I should hold it closer. So how do you make the tax incentives good enough or attractive for these investors, so that early stage investors, or these venture capitalists, etc., are more keen to invest in the startups? So I think that's the way the government can sort of help. The other thing I would think is that if the government sort of has something like a fund of funds, where it is able to get access to various venture capitalists who think in a certain, who have a similar philosophy. And then if they're able to sort of pool that capital, which is then available to the startups, so that makes it easier for a smaller startup or a lesser known startup who doesn't have that access to, international funds, to be able to sort of, get these funds. So these were some of the, things that I was sort of thinking.
Sure. Very, very interesting.
May I just add?
Like, yeah.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah, so just couldn't resist adding, because this is a topic close to my heart, having worked in the buy side earlier. So all these...
This topic close to all the startups' hearts. If they're going to get money from domestic investors, nothing like that.
Yeah, so that's
Absolutely.
actually happening in the IPO market. As we speak, all the startups who've grown to a certain level and are getting listed in the stock exchanges are getting that money. It's the earlier stage where the startups are, yet to reach that scale.
Stage.
All the fund managers, all the large private equity fund managers globally, whether it's, all the blue chip names or anything, they all get all these money from pension funds of, let's say, US, Canada, and other geographies, or sovereign funds of Singapore or, Middle East. But in India, that domestic ecosystem is yet to flourish to that extent, wherein, large insurance companies or large pension funds or EPS are kind of going to invest a decent amount of money in the unlisted venture capital or private equity side. That has started happening. Like we have a SIDBI venture capital and stuff like that, but that's already very, very small amounts. So that's what needs to flourish more to enable more capital in this.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, that besides, of course, the government, the regulators, innovation, etc. I think even companies need to, for example, someone like, Siemens. If we believe in having a culture of inculcating these startups, and we have within Bangalore, and someone might not like this, but within Bangalore, we have our huge startup hub over there. And so we do encourage a lot of startups over there. And within our own ecosystem, we believe that if a startup has a strong resemblance or support system with our existing business, then we will look at the startup very seriously. So for example, we are into buildings. 95% of our time, you won't believe, we spend in buildings. Whether it's in a home, whether it's in the office, whether it's at your, it's the gym, club, wherever you are, 95% of the time is in buildings. And buildings is so important to us that from a security perspective, from a smart metering perspective, sustainability perspective. So if you have any startup that's into this area, whether it's smart metering or whether it's energy saving, we as Siemens believe in investing in that organization, because that's going to help and strengthen our portfolio. So we invested a few years back, in a company called Brightly, which is basically into asset management. So whether you talk about assets globally, whether it's a hotel, whether it's an event or whatever you have it, they need our HVAC, they need our security system, they need a fire security system. Plus, when you also have, asset management services, it sort of complements. So I think even organizations, to a great extent, should complement these, startups to help them grow their own business. And that's what we do. And that's one of the KPIs that probably I would have, or any of my CFOs globally would have, to see how we encourage the startup system, not only to encourage the startup and help them, but also see how Siemens can benefit. It's a two-way street here.
Yeah, I think this bit I also, quite agree. For example, in the insurance space, we've started doing that a lot, because cost is absolutely, critical to sort of lower. And you have a very thin margin really. So what really helps is to be able to invest in these as a company, to invest in these startups, so that, you're able to leverage, just like Kairav mentioned. The startup gets the benefit and you get the benefit as well from a lowering of cost perspective. So I think, yeah, that's an important...
Agree. In fact, BFSI industry or maybe the sector, not an industry as such, has partnered with a lot of fintechs, right?
Correct.
Insurance, specifically insurtechs and banks, and I think that has changed the UI and UX of the whole financial institutions. So, Piyush, let me come to you and learn more on the emerging technology side. So, what emerging technologies do you believe India should prioritize in the next maybe 5 to 10 years? Because the trend of technology is also changing. People now talk about AI. A few years back, they used to talk about blockchain. Before that, they used to talk about IoT and open API and all those aspects. But suddenly now the focus is shifted to AI. So what are the emerging technologies that you think will change the ecosystem, and how should CFOs guide investments in sectors like AI, quantum computing, etc.?
Sure, thank you. So I represent Rebel Foods. It's a food tech startup. We are a world's largest internet restaurant company. Essentially, what we are solving for is, historically, in case of food, it's always single infrastructure, single brand. What we have is single infrastructure, multiple brands. So now we have almost 10 to 15 brands which operate out of the same kitchen, right? Which are brands like Fasos, Behrus, Oven Story, Wendy's, Smoor, and a host of other brands. Now, essentially, this is only possible if we are able to leverage technology. So what I want to sort of maybe start with is, what are those real life use cases that we are doing? Because end of the day, technology is a tool and business has a problem. If both sort of converge, that's the best use. So when it comes to Rebel Foods, I mean, right from we use predictive analysis to understand the consumer behavior. What do they order? What are those combo offers that are relevant for each and individual customer? And accordingly, the promotions are pushed to them. We handle almost 500 SKUs in our each kitchen. Typical restaurants operate with 50 SKUs. It's the same set of people. How can they handle 10x of the SKUs? Again, through technology. We have a data science predictive models, as a result of which we know that based on the demand pattern of last 5 years, what is it that a kitchen brand chef needs to pre-cook? How many kgs of rice needs to be cooked across the 400 kitchens? Is all through the data algorithm. You just open the laptop in the morning, it says today you pre-cook 2 kgs of rice. Because end of the day, 2 things are important. One is there should not be a stock out, there should not be wastage, right? Third element is, in case of kitchen, it's important to have a control over the utility. So we have the IoT devices, as a result of which we know 400 kitchen and 10 workstation, what are those electricity consumptions which are there. And that helps us to get a better control. Fourth is around the call center, and that is being done by various companies. It's important to make sure that customers have a right after-sales service. But that is done through the robotics or AIs, rather than trying to have the consumers to manage the call center. Only the escalation cases flow, and that's to be managed by the human, right? So these are some of the things. And then, of course, there is this whole data that is residing, right? Data is the new oil. So how can we have a right dashboard which is combined through the whole data source across the consumer, across what gets prepared, across what gets sourced. And through this, we take decisions on what is working well and what we need to improve upon. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that not only next 5 to 10 years, technology is ever evolving. I think it's important that as a CFO, we need to understand that in our business, what are those gaps that needs to be solved through technology, or what are those things which are working well, but if we solve through technology, will give us better ROI, right? And then you go out and be it India or internationally, there are a lot of these technologies which are getting built. I think keep that open mind, and some of these forums like this only helps us to build our knowledge, to say in world what are already getting solved, right? Embrace that. And then by understanding the challenges in our problem, our business, and also understanding what technologies are available, I think we'll only improve our technology bent. And then it becomes a habit to say that, can I solve each and every my problem through a technology rather than through a manual?
Yeah, sure. Nobody would have thought that technology बताएगी कि कितना चावल बनाना है सुबह. Wow, interesting. यहाँ पे सारे जो लोग हैं और including me, we want to just know one thing कि discount कैसे लाना है. how to get a discount on the food that we order. Is there any way, are we going to get some discount coupons?
Yeah, so we have an algorithm through that. I know that Amol does not think about discount. He thinks about quality. So we reduce the discount whenever Amol orders.
Very good. Interesting. That's a very good answer.
So they're talking about
But I
quality.
also realize now, thanks to algorithms like this, we are eating,
Yes,
because
what we
they
are eating.
make that algorithm in such a way that, you make it attractive for the customer.
Exactly.
And then, bang, you go and order.
Yes. So I told you, after the lunch, the sessions are always good. Okay. Anyway, so coming back to, now I will move to Kairav, and in the world of NextGen, how can CFOs lead the change in transforming India ecosystem or if you compete with globally? Because whenever you talk about India's Silicon Valley, we also see that a lot of tech companies or the big companies abroad are headed by the Indians. But if you look at India, the situation is absolutely different, right? So if you could share some maybe global thing.
Yeah, thanks. I think on this, it's a very crucial topic because, as I mentioned also in the beginning, that we need to understand the role of the CFO. Going forward, it's going to change. Hygiene of books and accords, making sure that the cargo is proper. All of that is a given. That is something that is expected of a CFO. But beyond that, it is also acting as a co-pilot with the CEO. And what do I mean when I say that? There are so many technologies that we need to embrace. Like, for example, within our organization, we look at RPA and RDA, and this, all of you all must be using this. Robotics, process automation, also desk automation. So basically trying to see how we can actually make sure that mundane processes are automated. Also look at things like the industrial metaverse. Now, this is something which both on the business side and on the finance side is hitting us big time. Where we are trying to see how we can actually simulate the physical asset in a digital way, to put it very simply. A lot of data modeling, a lot of physics. It involves us also as CFOs and as finance people to understand this. So, for example, our entire factory in Kalwa here in Mumbai, our switchgear factory is built on the digital twin, which means that we actually conceptualize the entire factory on the screen with every nut, bolt, and screw in terms of how they actually, the switchgear or the contactor is going to be made. And when the factory was actually made, it was made using the digital twin. Now, that led to, A, we completed the factory much faster. B, it led to savings in the overall cost. C, it led to energy savings, and hence brought the overall total cost of ownership down. So what I'm trying to tell you is every technology that we are dealing with will definitely have an impact on overall cost, and hence will have an impact on how we, and then the P&L. We're also looking at, for example, AI, Gen AI is important, machine learning is important. Like in our organization, cash flow forecasting. I don't know how it is done with you guys, but I sometimes struggle if I want to know today, when I'm sitting on the middle of the month, if I want to know how November is going to look. When I say cash, I'm talking about free cash flow. So I look at my inventories, I look at my payables. I want to understand that, and I want this at the click of a button, right? And we are trying to come up with an algorithm using Gen AI to see how we can actually predict, keeping certain normal neural networks and data patterns in place to see how we can predict, if not monthly, but probably quarterly cash flows. Extremely important from a finance perspective. So we are trying to use tools, not just on the finance side, but also on the business side. So it's a combination of both, trying to understand the accounting piece, the finance piece, but also trying to understand how business is going to move forward, as I mentioned, in terms of improving our using robotics, using AI, Gen AI, Copilot. Now, we've got licenses for Copilot now. It's easy to draft an email very, very easily. Not that I use a lot of that, but, many a times it sees the email and drafts an email for you. Many a times it scans a document. So we have a tool called Leads to Deals. Right from the time you get the lead till the time you close the deal, it scans the contract, gives you a synopsis, within 5 minutes or so of what the entire 200-page document is all about. So that's what, again, it's a lot to do with legal stuff. But we as CFOs need to look at the T's and C's, the commercial terms, etc. So it's a combination. Things are changing. We first had someone looking at this and delving into it in detail, but now you have tools and technologies that are going to help you. So understanding this is very important. As I mentioned also at the beginning, we need to unlearn. If we do not unlearn, we are not going to learn. So, in fact, in our organization, again, we have a target of 40 digital learning hours every year. Now, 40 hours might sound very small, but it's 5 days. 5 full days in a year devoted only to digital learning. And that's looking at tools which, you and I would never have learned probably 5 years back. Things that are absolutely new. AI was there years back, but right now you see AI and Gen AI has picked up so much. So we need to learn cloud computing, something which we never thought of. Now we need to figure out how we're going to account when you talk about subscription accounting or cloud computing. Something I never learned, when I did my CA. So we have to unlearn and then learn. These are things that are very important.
Do you also use ChatGPT?
Yes, we do use Chat. We have a Siemens version of ChatGPT. So for that we don't. A lot of the ChatGPT topics we have a how do I say, a customized version for ChatGPT, which is very, very specific to us.
If I may add, something which Kairav mentioned, we also have at Mintify. So I represent Mintify. We are a supply chain finance fintech funding almost $5 to $7 billion annually. So this cash flow forecasting problem you mentioned about is actually a day-to-day issue for us, not a monthly or a quarterly. And that's where we are using a lot of data science and AI to be a little bit more precise and accurate with the churn on it's like the very heavy churn of around $500 million or so per month. And at the same time, you also need to be careful about you're lending money to customers in India, to borrowers. So the other AI piece where we're using is predictive analysis of defaults, right? So wherever there is any early warning signs which the machine can pick up, we kind of get a heads up and we are, easily able to either come out of that situation or avoid that problem. So again, a lot of tech getting used in both finance as well as business.
Sure. So I will shoot my next question to you, Purnima. But before that, friends, what I will do is, since I told you that I will come to you, so after asking Purnima my question, I will come to you. So be ready with your question. Be very specific. I will ask my team also to get ready with the mic. Purnima, we discussed a lot in terms of how important technology is, how we should have a replica of Silicon Valley. I have a couple of more questions. But a lot of companies, including yours, is highly regulated. You also shared your views specifically on the regulation some time back. How free it is for you, to plan completely broadly without any minds and innovation unlimited, because regulator is going to be there. Whatever you do, it will be monitored. So how tough it is for regulated entities like you, to think about a Silicon Valley and, go completely haywire and think completely different and build something like that?
No, I think insurance is obviously a regulated entity, but if there is no innovation or if there is no tech integration, you obviously have your core function, your ERP system, etc. But if you don't have tech integration and you don't have the necessary, the chat bots or the voice bots, etc., or like he mentioned, the predictive analysis, it is almost impossible to work at the cost and the economics will not work for you at all if you are not able to have a certain level of technological advancement. And that is not something that the regulator sort of, in fact, it is very open to, these sort of things, and they themselves are very progressive in this respect. So very similar to, what he said. While we do use RPAs and we do automation, 100% automation in our finance processes, but really where the value comes to you in terms of the cost efficiency, etc., it comes where you're able to embed this in every process or every business process in your company. And that's where you'll see the efficiency of cost, like what what Kairav mentioned as well. So, our economics, one depends on how efficiently we're able to collect and how much we're able to collect premiums for the next subsequent years, because the profitability really comes from there. So you have a very detailed analysis where you run predictive models to say that which is a customer, and then you categorize them. He's a green customer. So without any intervention, the guy will pay to you. So if you're able to do that, and not have someone call him, then effectively you have saved on the call center cost for that particular person. So that is how it is measured. So how many people are people who will pay on their own because they have a certain salary profile, they have a certain history. So you know that they will pay. There are other people who will need a nudge. So then it is done through a call center. It is obviously less expensive than what it is to, have a guy in the branch actually call. So then there will be difficult customers who you have to go to their house, or you have to, be persuasive with them. and give them, so then that is when a human will actually intervene. And we have several, so the first category, which is the green category, we have these bots, which will basically, most insurance companies today have these bots who will remind the customer that, sir, your premium is due. And these are the benefits that you will lose if you don't, pay up, etc. So the bot itself is starting to collect, fabulous amount of money for you. So this is just sort of one aspect. And there are several such aspects where, you would not be able to do without the amount of technical advancement that we've been able to do today.
No, sure. I think that was very meaningful. It's not easy, looking at the regulations, looking at innovation, but yeah, your point is valid. If no innovation, perhaps no sustainability, in short. So let me come to you, friends. Anybody has any specific question? Can we have a mic there?
This question is to Purnima Madam. We expect always Reliance to be ahead of all in our country. I am also ex-Reliance. So Indes 117, have you already covered under AI?
No, we haven't. No, because for insurance, it is not still...
It's next year mandatory.
It is next year. So we are in the process of working on it.
Okay, so you will have some tips about that, how you are doing it?
I'm sorry?
You will have some tips about that to share, how you are doing it?
Yeah, so I don't know whether you, so the insurance accounting and 117 is very different from what you would use in the other industries. So I think at this stage, we are still trying to find out which is an onerous contract versus which is not. We are also a company which has a reasonably high overrun, which means that the products are priced at a lower than what our cost is in order to actually produce it. So how do you account for the overrun? How do you make sure that you have a balance between what goes into the current year's P&L versus what goes into the deferment? So what is the right sort of balance? We are still in the process of evaluating. And I think that's what you should, those are my tips for how you should think about it.
All right, thank you. I'll bother you separately.
Sure. आप एकदम कॉन्फिडेंटली खड़े हो गए और पूर्णिमा मैडम पूछा, मुझे लगा मैं डर गया कहीं क्लेम के बारे में तो बात नहीं कर रहे हो आप. Anyone else? Yes, can you have a mic there?
My question is to Caro. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So you spoke about one legal documentation summary, 200 pages getting turned. What is the name of that software?
So this was using Copilot, but there are many softwares that can actually be used to scan this. So if you look at, we purchased licenses for Copilot. So using Copilot also, we could actually scan this and figure out what the summary of that document is. But there are multiple softwares, to be honest with you, which can actually help you. In this case, leads to deals. So really quickly close the lead and convert it into a deal and be faster again to the market. But this is efficient. We also have internally our own developed software that helps us, but mainly from a margin analysis, profitability analysis, using Power BI and Tableau, where also we use and Mendix, where we use multiple tools to give me a summary of this quarter versus last quarter, half year versus half year, or performance of certain SKUs in terms of what is the margin analysis, movements. So all this, I have to probably go through the reports. Now it becomes very easy because I get it in Power BI or I get it in Mendix. So one is to get that dump from SAP or any tool that you're using into Power BI, Mendix, Tableau, QuickSense, what have you. And the second one is to use Gen AI to actually generate this for you automatically. That's faster. The latter is faster.
Great. Another question
thanks.
is you spoke about that Kalwa factory. What kind of software you do to predict?
So this is, good question. Now this will take some time. But so basically we have what is known as right from the time you do design till the time you do services, right? So there are two types of broadly industries, three types, but basically two, I was looking at discrete and process. So discrete is what you can count. I can count the number of bottles, I can count the number of cars, I can count the number of products, etc. That's your discrete industry. The process industry is something which you cannot count: oil, metals, etc. Things like that. So we basically deal with both industries. And there's also hybrid. Sometimes milk it's considered as a hybrid industry, but nevertheless, point is the whole idea is to look at the digital twin. Now, what I mean by the digital twin is right from the time you design the product, you engineer the product, you manufacture the product, you service the product, as in their servicing also that is there, and then you take it to the cloud. So all these 3 or 4 processes are first done on the software. Now, this software is a software which Siemens has acquired back in the late 1900s, so 1999, 2000, 2001, etc. We had a multiple series of acquisitions right from UGC, LMS. The latest one you must have heard 2 weeks back, we acquired a company called Altair. So we have a complete suite of industrial software products. Now what this does, like NX, Team Center, Mechatronics, all of that. So these are tools that help you design and also collaborate across what you want to actually see. So for example, if I want to see a BMW, right? I want to know how the bonnet would look. How aerodynamic is it going to be? How is the fluid simulation going to take place? Where is the door going to be placed? How many nuts, bolts, and screws? All this can be done on the system itself using NX, which is using design, using Team Center, which is going to collaborate across multiple tools. So I know exactly how the car will come out on day one without even actually starting my metal shop. So there are multiple tools, and it takes you right from the product and design through till service and also on the cloud. So and by the time, and I can tell you, when we actually did this factory, we not only brought down the number of, so we improved the cycle time. We made sure that the number of products that we manufacture in Kalwa are not just local for local, but also local for global. So at the end of the day, when you actually improve the product profile, even countries like Germany, in our case, Germany is the headquarters, or even US would look at India as an entity to bring products into their country. Initially, it wasn't the case, right? So it improves our brand image, it improves the quality of the products, it improves your faster lead time, and as I mentioned, the TCO comes down. So we've used multiple tools, but the whole idea is this is where the world is going to go, in the industrial metaverse, and we got to face this. This is reality. Every company, and India probably is moving in that direction, but if you see Europe, it is already it is there. Europe, US, even to a certain extent, I would say Australia. I mean, they are moving in that direction and they are adopting this.
Sure. Last question, maybe before I go back to them and shoot. Yes, can we have a mic there?
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Shekhar.
Sure.
Just an observation and a couple of questions for the panel. You guys were speaking about building a Silicon Valley in India. By nature, that question is emulating our Western counterparts. We have different capabilities in our country. Basically, our brain power is much higher. What do you think about facets like education, finishing schools for leaders? What about architecture? I think you mentioned traffic in your opening statement, yes. And that in itself, say for example, Bangalore, the worst road density in Southeast Asia, worst traffic in Southeast Asia, people are not getting to office on time. What do you guys think about building these sort of elements around the success story of Silicon Valley, and also why even call it Silicon Valley? Why can't titans of industry think of another name which reflects our core competencies? For example,
anyone can, maybe those who not answer can.
So we do have, you're right, it's a very valid question.
Yes.
So we do, traffic management solutions, for example, is extremely important. Whether it's on the road, whether it's rail, whether it's, mainly road and rail. So we are making an attempt towards that. And, probably I wanted to reserve this to the end, but I think if you look at us right now as sitting in this forum, assuming this was ETCFO NextGen 34, right, not 24, right? We were sitting in 2034, right? And just imagine if Amol is talking to us. If you look at ET's headlines today morning, right? It spoke about, I think, Ratan Tata's will. It spoke about some investment made in Andhra Pradesh. It spoke about Adani Green coming up with its bonds. I don't think the same headlines will come in 2034. What I'm trying to tell you is, yes, we are slow. No doubt about it. There's a long way to go. There's no doubt about it. But there are traffic management solutions that, for example, Siemens is working towards. But it's one drop in the ocean. With a population of 1.5 billion, it's going to take time. Yeah. Plus, we are a very complex and complicated organization. Country. It's not going to be that easy. But it's a topic that we need to think about. For example, Bangalore. I mean, it's extremely important. They talk about, I heard about those air taxis or something. I read it somewhere. I don't know how that's going to work in a city like Bangalore. I really can't fathom it. But it is what it is. So people are coming up with solutions. But sometimes, you hit an environmental barrier. Sometimes you hit a barrier from some, government or political organization, which is not very easy to tackle. But if you cut to a country like China, if a decision is taken that I want to have my factory over there, come what may, within 3 months the land is gone and the factory is up and running. Can we in India take such decisions? I mean, no matter how eager we are to do this, very difficult. But so I'm with you on this topic. Yes, this is really a problem we have to tackle. You raised the topic of traffic, hence I mentioned there are solutions. But clearly, education also, we want to take, I mean, you have the Baijus that will go bankrupt, right? But at the same time, you also have companies which are, moving to the next level, using technology for educating not just students, but also industrial people like us. So there are platforms like C-Train, etc. So efforts are being made, but not to the extent we should. I mean, that's my take on it.
I like that optimism, Kerao, and a very relevant and a realistic question which all of us face almost every day. And in fact, my last question was almost what you were indicating and what I said in the beginning is almost based on the same. So in fact, there was a very interesting report which was released in all the newspapers very recently, including ours, is a lot of FMCG companies which are having a shareholder of maybe the abroad or the foreign companies. If you look at the quality of the product is very different. For example, if you use the shampoo which is available in India is way different than the shampoo which they sell in Bahrain or some other countries. The quality is absolutely, abnormal in India, but the quality is high standard specifically in the foreign countries. If you look at the Uber, for example, and fortunately I have used Uber in a couple of countries, the service, the quality of the cars and everything is absolutely, what I can say, amazing. But in India, we know how it is, right? So I'm building this question for all of you, maybe a thought, and maybe you can answer, is how can India foster a similar mindset and what role can CFOs play in cultivating culture that embraces experimentation, failure, and the pursuit of breakthrough ideas? Because it's easy to bring those companies here. It's easy to bring those companies and copy their products here. But what about the quality? What about the culture? What about the risk appetite? Maybe a lot of thoughts here, but this is what I have for you. You can start.
Can I? Yeah. So we do, yeah, you're right. So many Western concepts get copied in India, but we also at our end have started on that path already. So for example, 10-minute grocery delivery or 10-minute delivery of anything is not probably there in the in the developed economies, right? So again, and that itself requires a lot of tech, a lot of predictive consumer, analysis, lot of as to what SKUs you store in which dark store. So again, to some extent, we have already started doing that. Probably, in my view, there's a lot of talent and a lot of people having those aspirations to solve the common day-to-day problems of people, but it is the availability of risk capital, how much capital one is willing to put to risk, and what quantum of that capital is available is what probably is one way of, if that quantum of risk capital increases through various channels, that's what will have more and more entrepreneurship going and more innovation happening.
Yeah, I'd sort of agree, I'd sort of agree to, what he's saying. Like the Zepto that's come now, which takes 10 minutes to deliver. It is never, we've never seen that in India, and I don't think we've seen that in other places. But the point comes back, and we have to circle back to the, the first question that you asked on access of funds and the availability of, retaining the talent who's actually thinking this. So one, we have a problem of talent we're not able to retain the talent who's thinking and who's wanting to do this. The next is the access of funds. The cost efficient. It has to be efficient for people who have these ideas are not the multinational companies or not really huge companies. So then you have to be able to find a way to get these people to see the funds and give them a cheaper access to funds. And that's how this risk capital will come about, and I think these problems will get solved. Also, I think it'll be unfair of us to compare, a country abroad versus, here. The quality of the car is better, but what you end up paying for it is also higher, there compared to what you want to pay. If you want to take an Uber here, you think twice before spending the 100 or 200 rupees. Whereas if you go to the US, you're happy to spend $20 because it says $20 and the Uber guy comes, he says you have to put on car seats, and then you do put on car seats and you don't put on the seat belt, etc. So I think it's also a question of mindset. What are you willing to pay there versus here? What is the access of funds that is available? The government, the companies that we talked about, etc., the regulations, all that have to enable free access and, simplify the processes so that these bright idea people are, all this is made available to them, and you have to give them enough incentive to stay in the country and not go off to the US or, elsewhere. I think that's what will really help.
Sure. Piyush?
Yeah, so I think again, right, Silicon Valley is a term that is more to fuel the innovation. But end of the day, we have to solve India's problem, right? India has advantage. For example, our cost of labor is low. But there are challenges. For example, real estate is costly. So as a result of which, there are some things that has worked in India, which has not worked globally, right? So end of the day, we should embrace this entrepreneur spirit and try to solve for India's problem. The second part that I want to highlight is that consumers are becoming more aware. The Gen Z, which is post-1990, I was reading a report, it says that it influences directly 5 to 8% of the total purchases made today. But indirectly, it influences 40% plus. So we have to understand that what do they think about from a brand or a consumer perspective. They are becoming far more self-aware. They are becoming far more critical than hierarchical, right? As a result of which, we at Rebel Foods are focusing to remove the plastic, right? Because sustainability is going to be important. Maybe for our generation, sustainability is good to have. But for a Gen Z, sustainability is recognizing that I want to be associated with this brand, right? So this is on the consumer side. We spoke about what's India's strength, India's problem. Second is about what is it that consumers will think, and we should be aware about Gen Z and also understand Zen Alpha, where they are still in the early days. The third is what is the role of CFO in this, right? I think, see, a capital is risky or it is giving good return. It only depends. I mean, there is a role that CFOs play a very, very vital role. Because end of the day, if a capital has been made available and to different stages of businesses, there are different levels of capital which are available, right? From angel investor to venture equity to private equity to a public market, right? I think there we play a very, very vital role to understand what is the problem, what is the capital required, and what is the return on that. If we are able to co-pilot with CEO and work very closely with business teams, we will actually do experiments in a controlled environment, which means controlled use of capital. And then only allocate more capital as we start seeing the success. If that discipline is where CFOs play a very, very important role, I think then we do sort of give back to the organization what we are supposed to do. And some of these startups have done well because they have been more measured in terms of use of their capital, deliver success before doubling down on the next stage. And if pilots have shown success, then there are more and more funds today which are available to put in money. I have seen that there are more venture capital or specific funds which are dedicated to climate change or to supply chain. So access to capital is available. I think as a CFO, we need to make sure that this capital is used wisely. It benefits business, consumer, but also to the stakeholders.
Sure. I think noted your points, Piyush. And Kero, quickly, maybe 30 seconds.
I mean, I think to add to what my friend said right now, I think just one point is basically, yes, capital is important, innovation, people learning, unlearning, etc. is important. But I think also what is very important is to understand how India is going to shape itself over the next 5 or 10 years. Because as I keep saying this, is it, the kind of capital norms that we have right now, are they going to be the same? The answer is no. It's going to be much easier for us to get capital going forward. So what is it that we need to do? As you mentioned, Uber, for all 2034, 50% of Uber will be autonomous. I don't know. Will we Indians be looking at I don't know, probably looking at going to the space. I have no idea. So what I'm saying is the vision is so different for the next 5 or 10 years. It's extremely expensive right now to do that. But for all ET's headlines in 2034 will be this. Really, the maximum number of Indians going to space. Now, what does that mean? It means that the per capita income for an Indian is increasing. The technology that an Indian accesses is going to increase. The way we are actually going to face the market is going to be very different to what we are doing right now. So I'm just giving an example. What I'm trying to tell you is it's going to change and we need to work backwards from there, rather than moving from now where we are to forwards. So I think it's going to be more visionary, Amol, the way I look at it. Yes. And companies need to invest now to reap the benefits after 5 years. Because if we start thinking, I need return on capital now, it won't come.
Sure, I think that was very, very meaningful and very relevant one. Maybe 2-3 quick data points. When I started working as a finance journalist in television, whenever the market is to crash and I used to interview the market experts, उनका एक line मतलब रटा हुआ था, वो foreigners ने बेच दिया, FII ने बेच दिया, इसलिए market गिर गया. That was the fun. Market क्यों गिर गया? Foreigners ने बेच दिया, profit book कर लिया. Now the situation is reversed. Look at the DII. The investments are DII and SIP investments. मतलब एक महीने में अगर 25,000 करोड़ क्रॉस हो रहे हैं, so that is one data point. Second data point, I'm sure Piyush will know it better than me. हर 5वें सेकंड में हम एक बिरयानी ऑर्डर करते हैं. That's the consumption story. Third, India is the only country जहाँ पे Uber के 1 million मतलब 10 लाख drivers है. Only Uber has 1 million drivers. So India is growing. Macros are amazing. GST already crossed 2 lakh crores of collection, which is very, very great. But again, like you said, India should look at India's problem, not compare with Silicon Valley. But we want something like Silicon Valley. We should call Bangalore or Mumbai a Silicon Valley. So thank you so much for listening to us very, very patiently, and thank you so much for sharing those meaningful insights. Thank you.
Thank you.